My name is Amara Chen, and the night my world collapsed started with champagne, and ended with the discovery that I was worth $50 million. Dead or alive. I was 34, a biomedical engineer with steady hands, and an even steadier heart, or so I thought. My husband Richard Walker had been the chief operating officer of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals for 8 years, and I had been his devoted wife for 6 of those years. What I didn't know was that for the last 3 years, our marriage had been nothing more than a business transaction, waiting to close. It was a Thursday evening in October, when Richard came home early, carrying 2 glasses of our wedding champagne, and wearing the smile that used to make me forget my own name. The same smile that had convinced me to leave my research position at Johns Hopkins to support his career. The same smile that had persuaded me to put my name on joint accounts, property deeds, and investment portfolios without reading the fine print. "Amara, darling," he said, setting the glasses on our marble kitchen island. The sound echoed through our pristine white Georgetown townhouse like a church bell. "I have incredible news. Marcus wants to expand our partnership. This could change everything for us." Marcus Blackwood. The name made my stomach clench in ways I couldn't explain. Richard's business partner was a man who looked at people the way a jeweler examines stones, calculating their worth, searching for flaws, determining whether they deserved to be set in gold or thrown away. I had met him dozens of times at company events, and every single interaction left me feeling like I had been weighed and found wanting. "What kind of expansion?" I asked, accepting the champagne, but not drinking it. Something in Richard's enthusiasm felt performative, like he was reading from a script he had rehearsed. "Well," Richard said, his eyes bright with an excitement that didn't reach his voice, "Marcus has been impressed with your background. Your biomedical engineering degree, your research experience. He thinks you could be a valuable asset to the company." Asset? The word sat wrong in my mouth. "Richard, I left research to support your career. We agreed that one of us climbing the corporate ladder was enough stress for our marriage." That was before Marcus made his proposal. Richard moved closer, his hands settling on my shoulders with a weight that felt more like restraint than affection. "Amara, what if I told you that this partnership could set us up for life? Real wealth, not just comfortable living, but generational wealth." I stepped back, studying his face. In 6 years of marriage, I had learned to read the micro-expressions that betrayed Richard's true thoughts. The slight tightening around his eyes when he was withholding information. The way his left hand would fidget with his wedding ring when he was lying. Both tells were firing now like emergency flares. "What exactly is Marcus proposing?" Richard's smile faltered for just a moment. "He wants to bring you into the company as a full partner. But there's a personal component to the arrangement as well." The champagne glass slipped from my fingers and shattered against the marble floor. The sound was sharp and final, like something breaking that could never be put back together. Personal component. "Marcus is lonely, Amara. His divorce was finalized last month, and he's looking for a companion who understands the pharmaceutical world. Someone intelligent, educated, beautiful. Someone like you." The words hung in the air like smoke. I stared at my husband, this man I had shared a bed with for 6 years, whose coffee preferences I knew better than my own social security number, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "Richard, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that sometimes love means making practical decisions for the greater good of everyone involved." "The greater good." I repeated the words slowly, as if they were in a foreign language I was trying to translate. "Richard, are you trying to pimp me out to your business partner?" His face hardened. The mask of loving concern fell away, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "Don't be crude, Amara. This is a business arrangement that would benefit all parties involved. Marcus gets the intelligent, beautiful companion, you get access to resources and opportunities you never dreamed of. And I get—" "What do you get, Richard?" "I get to secure our future." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. Legal-sized, cream-colored paper, the kind lawyers use when they want to make something feel official and irreversible. The divorce papers are already prepared. Clean, simple, no fault separation. You'll get the house, a generous settlement, and immediate employment with Blackwood Pharmaceuticals. Marcus is prepared to offer you a signing bonus of $2 million. I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. Divorce papers. Amara, this isn't personal. This is business. Marcus has resources that could transform our entire industry. He's developing treatments that could save millions of lives, but he needs certain arrangements to move forward. Arrangements. I walked to the living room window and stared out at the street, where we used to walk hand in hand on Sunday mornings, planning imaginary vacations and discussing the children we might have someday. How long have you been planning this? The opportunity arose 6 months ago. 6 months. I calculated backward through our recent history. The business trips that had grown longer and more frequent. The late night phone calls he took in his study with the door closed. The way he had started looking at me like I was a problem he was trying to solve rather than a woman he loved. And if I refuse? Richard's reflection appeared in the window behind me. Amara, you're an intelligent woman, you understand leverage. Our joint accounts, the house, the investments, everything is structured in a way that would make an adversarial divorce very expensive for you, and very profitable for me. I turned around slowly. You've been preparing to destroy me for 6 months. I've been preparing to secure the best possible outcome for everyone involved. Marcus is offering you a fortune, Amara. $2 million just to sign the papers, a position at one of the most innovative pharmaceutical companies in the world. And Marcus he's a good man. He'll treat you well, like property, like a valued partner. The distinction felt meaningless. I looked at this man I had married, had trusted, had rearranged my entire life to support, and felt something die inside my chest. Not love, love dies slowly, with tears and arguments and attempts at reconciliation. This was hope. Hope dies instantly, with the sharp crack of reality breaking through illusion. I need time to think. Of course. Marcus understands this is a big decision. But he'll need an answer by Friday. Tomorrow. These opportunities don't wait, Amara. That night, I lay in our king-sized bed while Richard slept beside me, breathing the slow, peaceful breaths of a man with a clear conscience. I stared at the ceiling and tried to process the impossibility of my situation. 24 hours ago, I had been a woman in what I thought was a loving marriage. Now I was a commodity being traded between two men, who had decided my future without consulting me. At 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and walked to Richard's study. I needed to understand how thoroughly he had betrayed me. I needed to see the financial records, the legal documents, the paper trail that would show me exactly how trapped I was. The study was Richard's sanctuary. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books that he never read, and a mahogany desk that cost more than most people's cars. I had been in this room thousands of times, but always as a guest. Richard had never encouraged me to explore his business documents, and I had respected his privacy. Now I understood that privacy had been a weapon used against me. I started with the filing cabinet, insurance policies, tax returns, investment statements. Everything was joint, but structured in a way that gave Richard control, while making me liable for debts I didn't even know existed. Our beautiful Georgetown townhouse wasn't owned by us. It was owned by a limited liability company that Richard controlled. Our investment portfolio was managed by a firm that Marcus Blackwood owned. The pattern was clear and devastating. For 3 years, while I had been playing the role of loving wife, Richard had been systematically isolating me financially, legally and professionally. I had no independent income, no separate assets, no legal standing that wasn't dependent on his goodwill. He had built a perfect trap, and I had walked into it willingly, trusting him to protect me instead of preparing to sell me. I was about to close the filing cabinet when I noticed something odd. At the back of the bottom drawer, there was a manila folder that didn't match the others. Older, more worn, with my father's name written in faded ink across the tab, Dr. James Chen. My father had died 2 years ago, a quiet, brilliant man who had spent his career researching cancer treatments at the National Institutes of Health. He had never been wealthy. Government researchers rarely are. But he had been respected in his field. I couldn't imagine why Richard would have a file with my father's name on it. Inside the folder, there were photocopies of documents I had never seen before, patent applications, research notes, clinical trial data, and at the bottom of the stack, a legal document that made my hands shake as I read it. Patent assignment agreement, dated 15 years ago, assigning all rights to a revolutionary cancer treatment compound called Compound 47X to Amara Chen, daughter of the inventor, Dr. James Chen. Effective immediately upon Dr. Chen's death. I read the document 3 times before the words began to make sense. My father had developed a cancer treatment. He had assigned the patent to me. And according to the dates on these papers, that treatment was now the foundation of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals' most promising new drug. I stumbled to Richard's computer and began searching for information about compound 47X. What I found made my blood turn to ice water. Blackwood Pharmaceuticals had been developing a revolutionary new cancer drug for the past 3 years. The drug was currently in phase 3 clinical trials, the final stage before FDA approval. Industry analysts estimated its market value at over $50 billion, and according to the patent documents hidden in Richard's filing cabinet, I owned it. I sat in that leather chair until dawn, pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. Richard hadn't married me for love. He had married me because Marcus Blackwood had discovered that Dr. James Chen's daughter was the legal owner of the most valuable pharmaceutical patent in decades. They needed me to transfer those rights, but they needed to control me first. The elaborate courtship, the encouragement to leave my career, the financial arrangements that left me completely dependent, the systematic isolation from my professional network. It had all been preparation for this moment, when they would present me with an impossible choice: sign over everything willingly, or be destroyed in a legal battle I couldn't afford to fight. But they had made one crucial mistake. In their arrogance, they had assumed I would never find out about the patent. They had counted on my trust, my financial dependence, and my emotional attachment to Richard to make me compliant. They hadn't considered the possibility that their own greed would leave evidence I could find. I spent Friday morning in the library, researching patent law and pharmaceutical regulations. I spent Friday afternoon in consultation with 3 different attorneys, using my father's name to get appointments I couldn't afford. And Friday evening, when Richard came home expecting my answer, I was ready. He found me in the living room, wearing the black dress I had worn to my father's funeral, and holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Amara," he said, his voice warm with anticipated victory. "Have you made your decision?" "I have." I handed him a glass of champagne. "I want to propose a toast." Richard's smile was brilliant with relief. "To new beginnings. To my father, Doc Jane, the brilliant researcher who invented compound 47X 15 years ago, and was wise enough to assign the patent rights to his daughter." Richard's glass slipped from his fingers exactly the way mine had the night before. But this time, I was the one who had delivered the blow. "Amara, I can explain." "I'm sure you can." I took a sip of my champagne, savoring the way Richard's face had gone pale. "Would you like to explain how you spent 3 years gaining my trust, so you could steal intellectual property worth $50 billion? Or would you prefer to explain how you and Marcus planned to trick me into signing away the most valuable pharmaceutical patent in history for $2 million? Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. "How did you find out?" "You kept my father's patent documents in your filing cabinet, Richard, right next to our tax returns. Did you think I would never look? Amara, you don't understand the complexity of pharmaceutical development. That patent is worthless without the resources to develop and manufacture the compound. Marcus has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into developing a treatment that belongs to me." I stood up, and Richard took an involuntary step backward. "Using research that was stolen from my father. Making profits that should have been mine. Your father was a government employee. His research belonged to the NIH. His research belonged to the NIH. His patent belonged to me. There's a difference, and you know it." Richard straightened his tie, a gesture I recognized as his attempt to regain control of a situation that was spiraling away from him. "Amara, be reasonable. Even if the patent rights are legitimately yours, you can't develop this drug alone. You need Marcus. You need Blackwood Pharmaceuticals." "Do I?" "Of course you do. You're a brilliant engineer. But you don't understand the pharmaceutical industry. The regulatory requirements, the manufacturing challenges, the distribution networks. Without Marcus, that patent is just an expensive piece of paper." I walked to the window and looked out at the street, where I had once imagined building a life with this man. "You're right about one thing, Richard. I don't understand the pharmaceutical industry. But I understand intellectual property law. And I understand that as of this morning, Blackwood Pharmaceuticals is in violation of federal patent regulations." "What are you talking about?" I turned around and smiled at him. Not the smile of a loving wife, but the smile of a woman who had just gained the upper hand in a war she hadn't chosen, but was prepared to win. I filed an injunction this afternoon. As of Monday morning, Blackwood Pharmaceuticals cannot continue developing, testing, or manufacturing any compound based on compound 47X without my written permission. Richard's face went from pale to gray. You can't do that. The clinical trials will be suspended indefinitely unless Marcus and I can reach a new agreement. One that acknowledges my ownership rights and provides appropriate compensation for 3 years of unauthorized use of my intellectual property. Amara, you're talking about destroying years of work. Millions of people are counting on this treatment. Then Marcus should have asked my permission before he stole it. Richard sank into the leather armchair, where he used to read the financial news on Sunday mornings. What do you want? I want Marcus Blackwood to understand that I am not a commodity to be traded between men. I am not a problem to be solved or an obstacle to be overcome. I am the legal owner of the intellectual property that his company has built its future on, and I will be treated accordingly. And what does that mean? Practically speaking, I finished my champagne and set the glass on the mantel next to our wedding photo. It means that as of Monday morning, I will be the majority shareholder and chief scientific officer of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals. It means that Marcus Blackwood will report to me, not the other way around. And it means that you, Richard, will be looking for a new job. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Richard stood up, his face flushing with anger. Amara, you're making a mistake. Marcus is not a man you want as an enemy. He has resources, connections, influence. He has a company built on stolen intellectual property, and a partner who committed fraud to access it. I walked to the front door and held it open. I think you should leave, Richard. This is my house. This is a house owned by Walker Holdings LLC, which is a subsidiary of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, which is about to be owned by me. So no, Richard, this isn't your house anymore. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant when he realized that the quiet, trusting wife he had manipulated for 6 years had never really existed. I had been a woman playing a role, waiting for a reason to stop pretending. You'll regret this, he said as he walked past me into the night. The only thing I regret, I replied, is trusting you for as long as I did. The following Monday morning, I walked into the gleaming glass towers of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals wearing a navy blue power suit, and carrying a leather briefcase that contained 3 years' worth of patent violation documentation. The security guard who had known me as Mr. Walker's wife now looked at me with confusion as I presented the court order that gave me access to all company records and facilities. Marcus Blackwood was waiting in the executive conference room on the 40th floor, surrounded by lawyers who looked like they had been summoned from their beds in the early hours of the morning. Marcus himself appeared calm, but I could see the tension in the way he held his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands as he shuffled through legal documents. Dr. Chen, he said as I entered the room. The title sounded strange coming from a man who had been planning to buy me, like livestock, just 3 days earlier. I understand you believe you have some claim to our proprietary research. I took a seat at the head of the conference table, the seat that had been his until this morning, and opened my briefcase. I don't believe I have a claim, Mr. Blackwood. I have a patent. A patent that your company has been violating for 3 years. One of his lawyers, a thin man with nervous eyes, leaned forward. Ms. Chen, patent law in pharmaceutical development is extremely complex. Even if Dr. James Chen assigned rights to you, those rights may not extend to derivatives and improvements. Stop. I held up a hand, and the lawyer fell silent. Before you continue, you should know that I spent the weekend in consultation with Patterson, Goldman and Associates. They're the intellectual property firm that represents Merck, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson. They've agreed to take my case on contingency, which means they're very confident about my legal position. The silence in the room was profound. Patterson, Goldman and Associates was not a firm you hired for nuisance suits or questionable claims. They were the attorneys you called when you were absolutely certain you were going to win, and you wanted to maximize the damages. Marcus cleared his throat. What are you proposing, Dr. Chen? I'm proposing that we acknowledge reality. Compound 47X belongs to me. Every derivative, improvement, and application of that compound also belongs to me. Blackwood Pharmaceuticals has spent 3 years, and approximately $400 million, developing a product they don't have legal rights to manufacture or sell. And I'm prepared to license those rights to Blackwood Pharmaceuticals in exchange for controlling interest in the company, immediate appointment as Chief Scientific Officer, and retroactive royalty payments for unauthorized use of my intellectual property. Marcus's lawyer whispered something urgently in his ear. Marcus listened, nodded, then looked back at me. How much are you talking about in retroactive royalties? I smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Patterson, Goldman and Associates estimates that unauthorized use of compound 47X over 3 years, combined with projected future earnings, puts damages at approximately $12 billion. The lawyer's face went white. Marcus looked like he might be having a heart attack. However, I continued, I'm not interested in destroying the company or preventing this treatment from reaching patients who need it. I'm interested in justice. Injustice, in this case, means that the people who stole my father's work will no longer profit from it. What are your terms? Marcus asked. I slid a document across the table. Blackwood Pharmaceuticals will be restructured as a joint venture. I will hold 60% of the shares and serve as Chief Executive Officer. You will hold 40% and serve as Chief Operating Officer, reporting to me. Richard Walker will be terminated immediately, and any agreements or contracts associated with him will be voided. Marcus stared at the document without touching it. And the retroactive damages will be waived in exchange for your cooperation and your acknowledgement that Dr. James Chen was the original inventor of the compound that will save millions of lives. The room fell silent again. I could hear the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic 40 floors below. These men were calculating their options, weighing their chances of fighting me in court against the certainty of losing everything if they lost. I'll need time to review this with my board of directors, Marcus said finally. You have until 5 o'clock this afternoon. After that, the offer expires and Patterson, Goldman and Associates will proceed with full litigation. That's not enough time. It's more time than you gave me when you were planning to trade me like livestock. I stood up and closed my briefcase. 12 hours should be plenty of time to decide whether you'd prefer to work for me, or be destroyed by me. I walked out of that conference room, and into the elevator that would take me down to the lobby. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of myself in the polished steel surface. The woman looking back at me wasn't the trusting wife, who had arranged her life around her husband's ambitions. She wasn't the grieving daughter who had never questioned her father's modest legacy. She was Dr. Amara Chen, owner of intellectual property worth $50 billion, and she was ready to claim what belonged to her. At 4:30 that afternoon, Marcus Blackwood called my attorney to accept my terms. At 5:15, Richard Walker was escorted from the building by security guards, who had been instructed to treat him like any other terminated employee with potential access to trade secrets. At 6 o'clock, I sat in the CEO's office that had been Marcus's until that morning, looking out at the Washington, D.C. skyline, and thinking about my father. He had spent his career in government service, developing treatments that would help people rather than making himself wealthy. He had been ridiculed by colleagues who left for private industry, dismissed as naive by researchers who prioritized profit over patients. But in the end, his integrity had been his greatest gift to me. He had created something valuable, and ensured that it would belong to his daughter, rather than to the government agency that employed him, or the pharmaceutical companies that would profit from it. He had trusted me to use that gift wisely, even though he had never told me it existed. The cancer treatment that would bear his name was already showing remarkable results in clinical trials. Within 2 years, it would be available to patients worldwide. And every dose would carry a small tribute to the government researcher who had worked tirelessly in anonymity, developing miracles that he would never live to see. But there was one more loose end to tie up. One more person who needed to understand the cost of treating people like commodities. I picked up my phone and dialed Richard's number. He answered on the first ring. Amara, thank God, I know you're angry, but we can work this out. I can explain. Richard, I interrupted, my voice calm and steady. I'm calling to let you know that the divorce papers you had prepared have been filed. But I made a few modifications. Modifications. The original agreement gave me the house and a settlement of $200,000. The new agreement gives you 30 days to vacate the Georgetown property, and no settlement at all. You can't do that. We have joint assets. We had joint assets when you were a trusted employee of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals. But you're not employed anymore, Richard, and the prenuptial agreement you insisted I sign includes a clause voiding all financial arrangements in cases of adultery or fraud. I never committed adultery. But you did commit fraud. For 3 years, you used your position as my husband to gain access to intellectual property that didn't belong to you. You conspired with Marcus Blackwood to steal patents worth billions of dollars, and you attempted to coerce me into signing away my legal rights through economic duress. The line was quiet for a long moment. Amara, please. I know I made mistakes. But I never meant to hurt you. Richard, do you remember what you told me Thursday night? You said that sometimes love means making practical decisions for the greater good. Yes. But, well, I love myself enough to make the practical decision that protects my interests and serves the greater good of justice. The greater good doesn't include supporting a man who tried to sell me. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have anywhere. I'm sure Marcus can recommend a good hotel. You'll have plenty of time to look for accommodations while you're looking for a new job. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Outside my office window, the sun was setting over the nation's capital, casting long shadows across the city, where my father had spent his career serving something larger than himself. Tomorrow, I would begin the work of transforming Blackwood Pharmaceuticals from a company built on stolen innovations into something that honored the legacy of Dr. James Chen. I would hire researchers who prioritized patients over profits, develop treatments that were accessible rather than just profitable, and build a pharmaceutical company that served the greater good rather than the greed of men who saw people as commodities. But tonight, I was simply a daughter who had discovered that her father's greatest gift wasn't the modest life he had lived, but the extraordinary future he had made possible for her. A future where justice and innovation could coexist, where brilliant minds could be rewarded for their contributions, and where women like me would never again be treated as assets to be traded between powerful men. The phone on my desk buzzed with a message from my assistant. Dr. Chen. The Washington Post would like to schedule an interview about the Blackwood Pharmaceuticals restructuring. They're particularly interested in your plans for making cancer treatments more affordable. I smiled and typed back my response. Schedule it for tomorrow morning. And make sure they understand that this story isn't about corporate drama or personal revenge. It's about a father who trusted his daughter to carry on his work, and a daughter who intends to honor that trust. Because in the end, that was what this had always been about. Not the money or the power, or the satisfaction of watching Richard and Marcus learn that women are not commodities to be traded. It was about a quiet government researcher who had developed a miracle in a laboratory most people would never see, and his daughter who would make sure that miracle reached the people who needed it most. The rest was just justice. And justice, I had learned, was a dish best served with a controlling interest and a legally binding contract. Did you like this story of transformation and hidden power? Tell us in the comments which city you're listening from. If you enjoyed Amara's incredible journey, please support us with a super thanks, so we can continue bringing you more empowering stories of women who refuse to stay small. Thank you so much for your support. We look forward to your comments about Amara's strategic rise to power. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that we highly recommend. There's so much more content on our channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect, S.